Zamba, so computer vision for wildlife conservation. My name is Emily Dorne, and I'm joined by my colleague Jay Qi, and we are both lead data scientists at Driven Data. A little bit of introduction before we begin. So Driven Data is a data science and machine learning consultancy in the social impact space. We work across a lot of different issue areas. Last year I was here talking about harmful algal blooms. Today we're talking about wildlife conservation. And the thing that really unites our work is that we're leveraging data science and machine learning to help mission-driven organizations work more effectively. So on the right-hand side of the screen are the core buckets of our services. Most of our work falls in the data science and AI bucket, so training machine learning models, analysis, visualization. One of the tools that we use in this space is running online machine learning competitions. So if that's interesting to you, you can check that out more at drivendata.org/competitions. But then our work also extends in both directions. So carrying things forward into production, web application development, and then also work more upstream in data engineering, so setting up data pipelines, data warehousing, and then sometimes working with organizations even further upstream on data strategy, on things like opportunity assessment and state of the field research. This is the lay of the land for our talk today. We are going to start with a little bit of context on wildlife conservation, camera traps, and the potential for machine learning in this space. And then we'll spend most of our time talking about what Zamba is and how it streamlines camera trap data analysis. And along the way, we'll share out key learnings in building impactful, practical machine learning tools for real-world use in conservation. So Hugo gave a great talk yesterday, and he was talking about the importance of spending time with your data if you're training models, right? A thing that we all know. And one of the more delightful parts in getting to work in the wildlife conservation space is getting to spend time with your data. So this is an example camera trap video. We've got some forest elephants in the Central African Republic. We've got a baby elephant that we're not able to see back there. So camera traps, for those who don't know, are cameras typically affixed to a tree. They're motion triggered. Here, I'll let you play this video one more time so you can see some more elephants. So they're motion triggered. They can record videos or images. Videos are typically 10 seconds to 1 minute long, and then images can be a single capture or a burst of images. And my promise to you is that this is not the only video that we get to watch throughout the presentation. So camera traps are widely used by researchers, conservationists, and park managers to monitor wildlife without human interference. However, they generate an enormous amount of footage, images and videos that need to be reviewed and then manually labeled by experts or citizen scientists to identify the specific footage of interest. As you can imagine, false triggers are quite common. Animals are not the only things that move in a jungle. So things like wind, rain, even changes in light can trigger a recording, leading to many, many images and videos that don't contain an animal at all. And this is sometimes as high as 70% of the data. As you can imagine, machine learning is well suited to this task, right? By labeling the species that are present in the images and the videos, we can save countless hours of time that is currently spent by humans reviewing these, letting those humans spend their time on more complex tasks. And this also lets us alleviate data processing bottlenecks and allow people to use this data and conduct conservation assessments in months rather than years. So to bring the power of machine learning to the conservation space, we built Zamba. Zamba is a set of tools designed for wildlife conservationists to accelerate camera trap data analysis with machine learning and computer vision. But this talk isn't just about training a computer vision model. It's really about designing a solution that leverages machine learning to address a common bottleneck felt by an entire sector. And so in order for this solution to be effective, we found that it needs to be accurate, extendable, and accessible. And these are going to be the 3 pillars of our talk today. So let's start with developing accurate models. Zamba has 3 core modeling tasks. The first is species classification, so predicting what species is present in camera trap images or videos using models that have been trained on large expert-labeled data sets. The downstream use case is filtering out those videos and images that don't have an animal in them, and then also selecting those videos and images that have the specific species of interest. The second modeling task is depth estimation. This means predicting the distance between the animal and the camera, and this is a useful input for distance sampling methods that are used to estimate population size. Lastly, there are anatomical pose models. These are doing segmentation and mapping those segmentations to specific anatomy parts for chimpanzees, and this is useful for studying animal behavior. For today's talk, we're going to focus just on species classification, and we're going to talk both about videos and images. Let's start with videos. So videos contain an awful lot of data. They're typically 30 frames per second and 1 minute long, and so that leaves us with about 1,800 frames per video. As you can imagine, processing every frame as if it is an image is just computationally impractical. It is also the case that animals are often present only in a minority of frames, and so one of the main challenges in video classification work is frame selection. I'm going to show you an example here, and I'm giving you the heads up because you got to look quick. It's not going to be there for very long. This is a typical camera trap video where you see this very cool bird, it's a guinea fowl, present for just a moment, and then gone. This video is only 7 seconds long, but typically it would be gone for the other 58 seconds, just a nice landscape video. So this is what our video pipeline looks like. 2 stages. The first stage is frame selection with a fast object detection model, and then selected frames are passed into a classification model on those down-selected frames. The output of this is then the species probability. Frame selection needs to be fast because it's an upstream task, and it needs to be reasonably accurate because obviously only selecting blank frames makes it impossible to accurately classify the species that was in the video. Zamba's default smart frame selection uses a fast object detection model called megadetector light. It was trained with a knowledge distillation technique, also known as student-teacher, on labels from megadetector. Megadetector is a well-known object detection model that's trained on camera trap images, and it can basically output if it is an animal, a vehicle, or a human. While accurate, it is far too slow to use as our upstream model, and so that's why we train megadetector light. On the right-hand side, you'll see a diagram of this where we label frames with megadetector, which is a YOLO v5 model, and then those labels are used in training the student model, which is a lighter weight architecture, YOLO x tiny. Once we have the frames that are most likely to contain an animal, those are passed into our classification model. Zamba provides 2 different model architectures for species classification, an image native model and a video native model. And the reason why we provide both is because there are different pros and cons for these architectures. The image native model is faster to train and predict, and a much simpler architecture to fine-tune, which is particularly important when we're talking about training custom models, which Jay is going to speak to more in a little bit. The video native model, on the other hand, is more accurate for smaller animals and is also able to pick up on cues from motion, which can be particularly important for detecting certain species. To make this feel a little bit more intuitive, I'm going to give you an example. So here is a single image, and I want you to see if you can identify where the animal is and what it is. So you're probably looking at this and a little hard to tell. It's grayscale, as a lot of camera trap images and videos are. You might see some shading in the back and think maybe there's something there. But then you probably notice in the lower left-hand corner, there's this dark, almost round figure. It seems likely to be an animal, yeah? But exactly what it is pretty hard to tell. It could be hunched over, it could be facing back, not quite clear. But if I show you a video, we'll see that blob starting to peck, starting to give it away, and then it gets up and flies away, and you go, of course, it's a bird, right? So this is why being able to pick up on those motion cues can be really, really helpful. So we have 2 different classification model architectures shown here. On the left-hand side is our image native model. This is a time-distributed efficient net where it processes the frames as images through efficient net and then aggregates those into a single prediction with a time-distributed layer. The video native model is slow-fast, and this basically does 2 passes over the video, a slow pathway that captures the spatial semantics, and then a fast pathway that captures motion. These models were trained on a lot of data because, as we all know, machine learning models do much better when trained on lots of high-quality data. So we have a data set of around 250,000 labeled camera trap videos from camera trap deployments across 14 countries. Half of this data was annotated by trained ecologists, and then the other half were labeled by citizen scientists and then have been highly thresholded to just the highest confidence labels so that they're high enough quality to use in our training data. The result is 3 pre-trained models. We have an African forest species model that detects 32 forest species commonly found in Central and West Africa, and then we have a European species model that captures 11 species found commonly in Western Europe, and then of course we have a blank detection model that just does that binary classification. This is a quick view on the African forest species model performance. I'm showing you precision and recall by species. This is evaluated on a holdout set of around 30,000 videos. This is doing a site-aware split where the exact camera trap locations in the test set are different from those in the train set so that the model can't learn the backgrounds and overfit to those. And what we see is an overall top 1 accuracy of 82% and an overall top 3 accuracy of 94%. Model performance varies, however. You'll see this, the metrics are ordered by recall, but precision varies as well. And what we find is that model performance is generally worse for smaller species, which makes sense, fewer pixels to be able to benefit from. Less common species, again, pretty typical in machine learning data sets, especially when they're heavily imbalanced. And then the models can also struggle with heavily occluded species as well as nocturnal species. However, these metrics are really intended to be demonstrative rather than generalizable. Camera trap deployments vary greatly, and model performance is impacted by a variety of factors, and so we always recommend that users evaluate model performance on their own data. I'm going to pass it over to Jay.
Thanks, Emily. Next, I'll be talking about our image species classification workflow in Zamba. So the vast majority of camera trap users actually collect images rather than videos because they're much easier to collect, store, and process. This is a trade-off. We saw earlier that you do get more information out of videos, but this is more practical for a lot of people. And because they are easier to collect and process, it also means that there are lots of other tools in the wildlife space that also work on camera trap images. And so for Zamba, we focus on helping people train custom models as a way to differentiate the contribution that we make to the field. And so rather than multiple models, Zamba has one pre-trained base model that is intended to be a generalizable base model for fine-tuning. So if you're interested in the many other tools in camera trap images, we have a couple notable ones shown here on the right. And so we similarly have a 2-stage image processing pipeline. The first stage, rather than being frame selection, we instead detect and crop to the animal in the image. The reason we do this is because research has found that when you crop the image to just the animal instead of having the whole image, classifiers perform much, much better, up to 25% better. And so because images are faster to process, in this first step of preprocessing, we use megadetector, which is the accurate but more expensive model we discussed earlier that detects animals, vehicles, or humans. And we use this to crop down to just the animal. So here on the right is an example of what this looks like. Megadetector will give you a bounding box of the animal in the image, and then we just have a cropped image that shows as much of the animal as possible. So next, I'll be talking about the second step, which is our classification model. So we use ConvNext v2 base as the backbone for our classification model. The reason we do that is because we did a bunch of experimentation, and we found that the ConvNext family of models has significantly higher accuracy than other ones we tried with much fewer training epochs. And this is really important because we care a lot about fine-tuning, so we found that this gives the best result for fine-tuning. For training data, the image model was trained on over 15 million annotations from over 7 million images. This data set was aggregated from 20 terrestrial camera data sets from Lila, BC, which is a notable wildlife camera trap repository at lila.science. I encourage people to check it out. It's really cool. It has a lot of really cool data sets from all over the world. And so this represents a really wide range of global habitats and species. it was actually a bit of a challenge because when you take the union of the species labels across these 20 data sets, you end up with 1,231 label classes, which is too many. And so there's also a lot of redundancy in there. There are different taxonomic ranks. And so we curated a unified taxonomy of 178 label classes, which is still a lot, but is a good representation to use as a base model for fine-tuning. So here is a quick view of the performance of our global species model. As before, you should treat these metrics as illustrative because metrics depend a lot on the particular data set and context that you're interested in. And so in general, we took a holdout set of 450,000 annotations, and there's pretty wide variance across the different classes, but we also see that overall the performance is quite strong. So the top one accuracy overall is 90%. This chart on the right shows an empirical distribution of F1 score. So the way you read it is if you take a point on the curve and you look at the value on the x-axis, the y-axis number of classes has a better F1 score than what the curve shows. And so what we see is that 40% of the label classes in our test set have an F1 score of over 0.9, and 71% have an F1 score of over 0.8. And so quite strong performance on many of the label classes. As with the videos, again, this is very context dependent. One of the reasons some of the classes that are weaker do less strongly is because they have lower representation in the data set. Another reason is that even in our curated taxonomy, we have a lot of phenotypically similar species, and that causes confusion in the classifier. So different taxonomic ranks of birds, for example, is one reason that some of these classes don't do as well. So we talked about how we developed accurate models. The second pillar we want to talk about today is extendable models. How can we actually make sure that what we're producing addresses the needs of all conservationists with camera traps? And so this brings us to the need for custom models. Camera trap applications vary very widely in habitat, in object of study, in taxonomic rank. People study not just terrestrial mammals that we saw lots of examples of earlier, but also underwater species, insects like bees. They sometimes will be at night, sometimes they're in the day. Sometimes people study weather patterns with camera traps. And so pre-trained models by themselves, just a fixed set, isn't enough to cover everything that people want to use camera trap processing tools for. And so it's really critical to support custom models in order to support all of the conservation workflows that exist in the world. So because of that, Zamba includes a first-class fine-tuning workflow for both videos and images. The pre-trained models are designed with robust geographical and species representation so that they are capable base models, as we discussed. Through experimentation, we have also found a good set of effective, reasonable defaults for fine-tuning, and so those are built into Zamba, such as the splits, learning rate, early stopping, et cetera. And so with this, we've done the work of training a base model on a broad, large data set, and users who have particular specialized use cases can bring smaller, narrow data sets and fine-tune custom models. Fine-tuning, we found, can be very effective with as little as a few hundred examples per label class. And this fits well with the circumstances of many conservation projects because a lot of them have been collecting data for a long time. They already have data from prior manual annotation, and so they can leverage that prior manual annotation to train custom models. And all you need is to bring the media files and a CSV with your label classes and file paths, and that lets you easily fine-tune. Here are the results of an experiment that we ran using data from New Zealand. So the base model was our African species model. The new data set shown in the yellow here with the counts of label classes is birds and rodents in New Zealand, very different. And we can see that this is highly imbalanced. It's not a huge data set. There's about 3,000 videos in total. Some of the classes don't have very many examples. But on the right here, we can see the F1 score of the results. The overall top 1 accuracy was 91%. You do see some variance and some drop-off in performance, but one really interesting thing is that the drop-off in F1 score is much less steep than the drop-off in label class counts. So you can see that even some of these classes that have fewer than 100 examples have pretty decent F1 score, which is pretty good for not having very much data. Okay, so we talked about accurate models and extendable models, and so we've got the machine learning stuff down, but we still need people to actually use the solutions that we're developing in order to solve real-world problems. So how can we make our models accessible? So first is open source. So Zamba is an open source Python package. It's built on top of the popular open source deep learning framework PyTorch, and many other pieces of the scientific Python ecosystem. Zamba, again, is itself an open source package. Being an open source package is great. It fosters collaboration. It invites collaboration. It fosters transparency and trust. And it also promotes integration and portability. Zamba is very easy to use. So we have a very convenient command line interface. You can basically write one line of code with some file paths, and you can easily predict on new data. You can train, fine-tune a custom model. That's well and great. I think the folks here at this conference probably would love that command line interface, very easy to use, but many conservationists are not programmers. And so that's not enough for a lot of people who have camera trap data and want to process it. And so Zamba needs to still be accessible to these users. And so that brings us to the next part of the project, which is Zamba Cloud. So in addition to the open source package, which has the nice CLI and lets people inspect or extend or contribute to the open source code base, we also have Zamba Cloud, which is a code-free web application where people can upload data and use all of the capabilities that are under the hood in Zamba, the open source package. And so the way this works is we have nice interfaces, nice workflows. You have a drag and drop interface to upload your data. We will then run the either inference or training job as a batch job on cloud hardware with GPUs to process the data efficiently and quickly. Then we will calculate metrics, and we have a nice UI to view the performance metrics of the model that you may have fine-tuned. And then you can use the same drag and drop interface to upload new data, perform inference on them, look at what the results are, look at the predicted labels, and review things. And then that brings us to the outputs. So you can download the predictions as a simple CSV file. It's easy to use for somebody who's not a programmer with Excel or any other statistical software. The format is simple and portable. And the PyTorch model weights are also available, so people can download the PyTorch model weights trained in Zamba Cloud, but then run them on their own later with Zamba, the open source package. And so the reason that we do all of this is to try to make things as portable as possible so that people aren't locked into having to use Zamba Cloud only. This is meant to be open and accessible. Since 2018, Zamba has served over 300 users from around the world. We've processed more than 1.1 million videos. Our image support is relatively new. We just added that in March of this year, and we're really excited to see people start using it. This is a fine-tuned model trained by one of our users. He lives in Seattle, and he has camera traps in his backyard, and he put that into Zamba and trained a custom model that performs quite well, so fun to see that. So in conclusion, by enabling conservationists to efficiently analyze large data sets, train models tailored to their specific ecological contexts, Zamba advances wildlife monitoring, research, and evidence-based decision-making. Again, our key takeaways: accurate machine learning models can effectively identify species of interest in camera trap videos and images. Extendable models enable Zamba to be useful to everyone who collects camera trap data, and accessibility is critical for actually getting machine learning into the hands of conservationists. I want to recognize everybody at Driven Data who contributed to Zamba, and also the collaboration and generous support from other organizations we worked with: the Max Planck Institute for Evolutionary Anthropology, Wild Labs, the Arcus Foundation, and the Patrick J. McGovern Foundation. And that is our talk. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, thank you. We've got a few questions, actually a bunch of questions in Slack. So we'll go by emoji ranking here. So Ariana asks, you show that the precision and recall differed a lot by species. However, some species may be more important to ID than others, e.g. endangered leopards versus common birds. Do specific stakeholders have high interest in one species? Can you easily account for this need?
It's a good question, and it is very much true that species that are important to one group may be less important to another group. One of the nice things about Zamba as well is actually being able to share videos, and so sometimes capturing videos, even if they're not your primary species of interest, being able to share those with other groups, where basically one person's bycatch is another person's treasure. In the case of being able to prioritize certain species, that's really where the fine-tuning workflow comes in, where if that's the focus and you've got extra labeled data on that, that's a great way to improve the performance of that model and to train a specific model for your species and ecologies.
Thank you. Martha asks, how does Zamba handle multiple animals or species in one frame/video?
Good question. So because you're outputting probabilities, it is a multi-label problem. So you can have multiple animals in a video without issue. For the image classification, we're predicting on the bounding box level. So if there are different species or even just multiple individuals, you get one row per individual that's in the image.
And James asked, he noticed the videos you showed also had a temperature, probably like ambient air temperature and time of day. Were those things broadly available in the training data, and are they included for like image embeddings to be able to say something like the time of day is meaningful for finding a given species, or yeah, that actually.
It's a good question, and yeah, good eye. So that is available. It's actually not used. We actually explicitly crop out the bottom 50 pixels because there are oftentimes a camera trap logo, and that can actually cause leakage where it starts to pick up on things that you don't want to pick up. And so it would be interesting to actually do some OCR and pull that data out separately so the models could take advantage of it.
Awesome. And I was gonna, oh, sorry.
I was just gonna add that it's tricky because you can both have leakage, but also you can have more information. And so you need a lot more care in the data set you use for training and evaluation if you're going to do something like that. And so that can be hard because a lot of times users have camera traps from specific locations. They can't easily vary those kinds of parameters in a way that you can sort of control and train a generalizable model, I think is one of the difficulties.
I was going to exercise chair privilege, but someone else asked the question I wanted to ask. This is great.
Maybe next time.
Do you have advice on what I would need if I wanted to start capturing wildlife in my backyard? Obviously, location would matter. So let's say you may be in Madison, Wisconsin, or upstate New York.
What do you need? All you need is a camera trap.
How many hand-labeled videos should I, if I wanted to fine-tune for my backyard?
Oh, if you want to fine-tune for your backyard. I mean, typically with fine-tuning, roughly recommend 100 examples per class. So I'd say first pass is set up a camera trap in your backyard, run it through Zamba, get some predictions out, see what you're seeing, do some labeling of data, and go from there.
It's a lightning talk for next year. Fantastic. All right, let's give our speakers another round of applause.